Hi, this is Frederick, just reviewing a book on the acquisition of child language. This is a textbook for undergraduates, a recent textbook, and pretty accessible for most of the chapters. It's not until the later chapters that this book becomes more suited for those who are interested in linguistics. Chapter 1 is an introduction pointing out that children acquire language without much effort. By the time they're school age, I think, 6,000 words, plus a system of grammar. So a lot is happening very fast language acquisition. If we could learn a second language in adulthood in the same way as children, we would seem rather remarkable to our peers. The levels of language can be described as speech sounds, not speed sounds here, speech sounds, vocabulary, morphology, which are the parts of words, and grammar. So 4 different areas. And by the age of 2, children seem to understand some fundamental rules of syntax, which is, for their primary language, the rules that govern how words and sentences are put together. Animals communicate. It's a very interesting part of language, but they really don't have the sorts of language that humans demonstrate. The complexity of our language is far beyond the ways that animals can communicate. And animals can learn an extensive vocabulary, but they can't seem to really acquire grammar. Why not? Is a question. I mean, this is a pretty effective author, and within these chapters, these subjects are evaluated and explained. Chapter 3 concerns the critical period of language acquisition, which is that there seems to be a critical period, a window of opportunity to develop a primary language if this is frustrated or child is not exposed to a sort of social communication. They don't really ever seem to recover from it. It's probably true that the critical period is biologically determined, and you can see the effects of deprivation most strongly during this critical period. It's not clear where this ends. The interesting parts for us is whether there's a critical period for secondary language acquisition. If you've tried to learn a secondary language in adulthood, it'd be interesting to consider whether you found that to be difficult or easy. Toddlers, what seems to be true is that adults and older children engage with toddlers in a style of speaking, a register called child-directed speech. Here again, not speed, but speech. I'm sure that is me and not my computer. But we tend to talk to children in such a way that facilitates this rapid rise in vocabulary, grammar, morphology, so on and so forth. They can't get this from television. You can't just put a television in front of a kid and expect that they're going to develop language. Now, shows like Sesame Street can facilitate a sort of understanding of language, but children need interaction to develop language. And what parents often do is, if you've had kids or dealt with kids, you know that you do this, is you recast what they say. You repeat back to them with modifications, which are usually improvements. What are speech sounds? Speech sounds we're called phonemes. There's about 800 phonemes. many of which you cannot say. You cannot produce certain phonemes because you did not acquire them during your critical period of language development. But any child in any culture can incorporate the phonemes of that primary language. And what children's, the task, I mean, phonemes come at just like one long string of sounds. And so what children have to do is to learn where the breaks are. They're presented with just a long string of noise, and what they have to do is to what the author calls here penetrate the babble. And this chapter explores how that's done, just how we intonate, how we intone, say the rhythm of our speech, the prosody. Looks like I missed chapter 6 here. I'm going to put it in real quick. Chapter 6 concerns lexicon. The vocabulary. What is true is that children comprehend words much more quickly than they learn to produce them. And they go through a vocabulary spurt at about 18 months where they rapidly acquire word knowledge. And just think about how much time do you get to develop a 6,000 word vocabulary by age 5? That's a lot of words a day, maybe 30, 40 words a day that you pick up. How will you get those words if you don't have someone to interact with? Just back here, overextension is a key concept here. Children often overextend a word's meaning. They use words beyond their conventional meaning, and through social interaction, they learn that we don't say that. And then through child-directed speech and this process of recasting, parents are able to teach children that the words aren't used that way. So what is morphology? Morphology is the internal structure of words. A morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a word. Let's look at dance as a lexeme, a basic word form. The morpheme in there is dance. Now we can make a new lexeme, a new word form, dancer from dance. And how do we do that? We do that by adding two morphemes. And someone who operates or does something to dance. A person who dances is a dancer. So we added two morphemes to get a new lexeme. And as you can see, chapter 7, 8, 9 is this part of the book. Chapters 1 through 6 were, hey, this is very interesting reading for the layperson. Chapter 7, 8, 9. Do you want to study linguistics? And so now you're getting into some technical language to understand how linguists think about such things. So chapter 7 continue. We can derive new words, or we can inflect new words. So for dance, we add two morphemes, dance and ed, the second morpheme, but we don't get a new lexeme because there's not a new word meaning here. It's just a different form of dance. Inflection is it just changes the grammatical function. And you can also get new lexemes by compounding. So here's an example that uses all three processes. Shoot plus ing, star plus s, shooting plus star, or should be an s here. Shooting stars. You get all three processes working together. Okay, chapter 8 is about Noam Chomsky, who has a theory which is not well supported, but has some support. And you can, whether you agree with him or not, you can be very sympathetic to this argument that certain aspects of our knowledge and understanding are innate. Part of our biological endowment, genetically determined, on par with our common nature, that causes us to grow arms and legs rather than wings, gives us the capacity to develop language. So this is called universal grammar theory. It's a nativistic point of view. The environmental point of view is a usage-based approach to language acquisition, basically that language arises out of social interaction. Chapter 10 continues with this sort of discussion of nature and nurture, not nature versus nurture. It's obvious that both elements are involved. This is also a pretty accessible chapter. You don't have to study linguistics to be interested in chapter 10. But what I thought was very helpful was some nice charts of how children acquire language, both by comprehension and production. And then a very interesting addition to the back of the book is some excerpts from 1780s chronicling an individual chronicled the language development of their own child. I thought that was pretty interesting. So overall, it's a very easy to read textbook. I think the more challenged in the later chapters 7, 8, 9, where it clearly moves into linguistic theory. But in terms of understanding how children acquire language and how the genetic parts of being human make it possible, and the social interactions that are necessary to make the genetic parts work right, was quite effective. Thank you.